folks, and welcome to Tech Talk. My name is Anu. My guest today is venture capitalist Tim Draper. Come join me. Hi, Tim, and thanks for being on this show.
Great to be on your show. Terrific. Well, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to this.
Absolutely, us too. So you are one of the most famous venture capitalists in the world. You are founding partner of Draper. You're a founding partner of Draper Associates and DFJ. You're the founder of this magnificent Draper University. You have started incubators and networks of venture capitalists. You have teams in China and Japan. And
you've done your research.
I've done my research.
Good for you.
And you recently launched a book, How to Be the Startup Hero, which, by the way, I have read, and it is just so inspiring, and I highly recommend it to any aspiring entrepreneur out there.
Thank you. And you know, a lot of ghostwriters came to me and said they wanted to write for me, and I said, you know, I kind of want my own tone, and I wanted it to feel like this is my book, and it does. I mean, I'm sure it's not as entertaining or whatever as some books are, but it's got my tone.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I wrote every word. I just decided that I was just going to do it, and I did it on airplanes. Did it with this. I wrote it all on the iPhone, and I just went boom, 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 and then I edited it on the computer, and had a great time doing it. Everyone should write a book.
Yeah, one day.
Yeah.
And then
I wrote it because I kept repeating myself over at Draper University, and I thought, you know, I've been saying these things over and over and over, and they're kind of the same message. Let me just get it down on paper, and then we can spread it to many more people.
Yeah.
Glad you read it.
I read it.
Did you try any of the challenges?
I have not done the challenges.
They're tough.
No
one's gotten it yet. No one's gotten the Bitcoin yet.
I see. So, in addition to your book, you have invested in companies like Hotmail, Baidu, Skype, and Tesla, to name a few. And you are one of the most
more recently, Robinhood, Twitch, Coinbase, and Carta.
Phenomenal.
So things are going very
going well.
Yeah.
And you are obviously, one of the world's greatest supporters of Bitcoin.
Yes.
Yeah. You come from a family of venture capitalists. You grew up in Silicon Valley. I want to start at the beginning. Tell me about what your childhood was like.
Oh, the Silicon Valley was a bunch of apricot groves and prune yards. And so it was a lot more rural than it is today. And we went from, we would always cut across people's properties to get to each other's houses. And that's what it was like. And my grandfather was the first venture capitalist in the Silicon Valley. My father was a pioneer in venture capital. And I got to see sort of secondhand how all of that built out the economy, and how it became the center of all this economic engine. And so I did get a really good feel for it. And growing up here was great fun, wonderful place. I made a lot of very good friends, and we got into all sorts of trouble.
Wow, I mean, what's not to like, right? It's such a beautiful place.
Great weather, and this was before all the fences went up between the houses, and so we were able to just run free.
Yeah. So let's talk about your book. Your book, How to Be the Startup Hero. The startup hero is one who creates an environment for freedom while still pointing the company in the right direction. Can you elaborate on that?
So the startup hero, I use the term hero, I'm kind of thinking superhero. Superhero is thinking of the future. It's a person of the future. How do you create this new environment? A hero, when we think of hero, we think of the people of the past.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
We don't always think of the people of the future. So these are really what we're really trying to do, although the startup superhero might have been a little too much on the book cover. We're trying to create the superheroes of the future, and those heroes, those people, have to take long odds at some extraordinary outcome. And if they can do that, and they can stand alone for a while, and even though they get ridiculed or whatever, and if they can have real perseverance, and they can maneuver in such a way as to attract great people and build a great product and get customers to use it and get them to the customers then to be the sales force for the business. That's what I want those heroes to do. And it turns out it is not an easy life, but it is transformative for all the rest of us. And so I always look at it and I say, wow, you people are making all of our lives so much better.
Sure. Tim, in your book, you mentioned having experienced enormous failures that were hard to walk away from and failures that were hard to learn from. What were some of those failures?
So my enormous failures are failures to act. And they're bigger failures than any failure I had that I did. Although I did talk about the failure of putting the school voucher initiative on the ballot, and I have failed politically over and over and over. I don't get it. I don't know why people don't feel like a free market for education would really work, because it works at everything else. But I got beaten down. The teachers union spent $100 million to shut that down because they're interested in their own power, not the kids.
Yeah.
And that is a problem. But and I tried 6 Californias and then 3 Californias and failed to recognize that the system was a little rigged against me in both cases. So there are those failures, but my biggest failures were failures to act. When overcoming, partner dissent or pushing something through or whatever, they kept me out of some of the best companies in the world. So I'm sorry I didn't make those decisions. We had an opportunity to invest in, you name it, all the biggest companies in the world, and we missed many of them. Got a few.
Exactly. So, what inspired you to create this amazing Draper University?
It's really interesting. It was my son's idea to start with. My son Adam said, start a school. Because I bought the building, and it was an old hotel here, and I thought, I think I want to try something. I want to do something with that. And I didn't know exactly what it would be. And when he said start a school, I thought, that's exactly what I want to do. I've always wanted to start a school. And this is a great opportunity for me to encourage people in a new way. And all I really know anything about is entrepreneurship. So I teach entrepreneurs to become heroes there. And the biggest surprise I had was that it worked. We brought in all these students at the beginning, and we were thinking, oh boy, now what are we going to do? They're all here. And it was amazing how well it all worked. And now we've had 1,000 students. They've started 350 companies. One's already a unicorn, Quantum became a unicorn, one of the top 20 tokens in the world. A woman started a business at Draper University, Surbi Sarna, and she created a very fine fiber line that goes up the fallopian tube and can determine if there's cancer in the fallopian tube without damaging the fallopian tube. And so Angelina Jolie wouldn't have had to have the whole thing ripped out. And she got FDA approval, and then she sold her business for $275 million. So I put her on our board. And so we're only 8 years into Draper University, and we've already got that kind of success. We also have about 10 other people that have businesses that are worth between 10 and $100 million. This is working.
Yeah.
It's crazy it's working so well.
I mean, it's just a fascinating place. I walked in here and it's really cool the way you have the whole setup and it's young and it's vibrant. It's really a neat
fabulous.
place.
Yeah, we've really loved it. And then I have 1,000 alums, and they go out and they send business plans to me, not just theirs, but their friends.
Yeah.
And that has ended up being a great thing. So we've, I do spend a lot of my time sending recommendations for people, getting them visas, doing that kind of thing, who are my students. But on the other hand, they have given back so much to the school too. So it ends up working very, very well.
Yeah. So you are, as I mentioned earlier, one of the most prolific supporters of Bitcoin.
Yes.
How did you start your Bitcoin portfolio?
Well, Bitcoin for me started way, way back because I was talking to this Korean guy, and he said that everyone was playing this game, Lineage, and I think that's what it was called. Anyway, he said everyone in Korea is playing this, like half the country is playing Lineage. And I said, wow, that's quite a bit. And he said, yeah. And it's so important to me that I hire someone to be my avatar while I'm at work. So suddenly I started to think there's a virtual life at a different level than the real life. That people are going to live in this virtual life. And there was virtual money in that game, but I kept looking for where is the digital money that could transfer from game to game. I thought that's the way it was going to start. But then Bitcoin came along, and I said, oh my gosh, this is huge. And I jumped in, I backed something called CoinLab, and then I also put some money into CoinLab to mine my Bitcoin. So he mined a whole bunch of Bitcoin for me. First he went and bought a chip, and the chip wasn't delivered, and wasn't delivered, and wasn't delivered. It turned out the people who made the chip were front running him. They were mining with it before they sent it to him. So they finally sent it to him very late. Bitcoin had gone way up in price, but still it worked, and he mined a bunch of Bitcoin for me, and he stored it at Mt. Gox. And then Mt. Gox disappeared all that money, and I thought, oh well, that's the end of Bitcoin. Too bad. But the next day, Bitcoin had only dropped about 15% in value, as opposed to zero. I thought it was going straight to zero, and I thought, people really must need this, because you can't trust the biggest transactions in Bitcoin were going on Mt. Gox. You can't trust the biggest exchange in Bitcoin. Why would you do it? So I said, something's going on. I've got to figure it out. And so they, all the press would say all this illegal activity. Turns out that wasn't really what people were doing. And I'll give you an example of what somebody was doing. Sebastian Serrano came to Boost, my son's accelerator, and he said, I've been living in Argentina all my life, and during my life, my family has lost its fortune 3 times to the peso. And he said, and I'm only 30, so 3 times they've made and lost a fortune. And he said, Bitcoin, no matter how volatile, is going to be a lot better than the peso. And so he brought the peso back. So I started to think, wow, so there are going to be people who just use this as their standard token. And then as time went on, I thought, wow, oh my gosh, yeah, it's decentralized, it's frictionless, it's open, it's global, it's transparent, it's fantastic. And at that point, I realized that eventually we're all going to Bitcoin or something similar. And there's no real reason that we use currency that's political, that's tied to some political force or another, that will swing from one side that makes too much of them to another side that doesn't make enough. And Bitcoin, there are only 21 million in the world, and it's a great store of value, but it will also be a great system for trade, because everything will be taken accounted for. So, for instance, if I am a venture capitalist and I decide I'm going to raise all my money in Bitcoin, I'm going to invest it in about a bunch of companies, all in Bitcoin, and all of them pay their suppliers and their employees in Bitcoin, well, all the accounting is already done because it's all on the blockchain. It's already done. We don't need the audit. We don't need any of that because it's done. And the other thing that can happen is that the contract can all be built into software, so it can be a smart contract. And that could mean that when one of those companies sells out for a bunch of money, the whole waterfall, they call it a waterfall, of money that flows to all of the investors and to the company and to us, the venture capitalists, would just go according to the way the smart contract was written and built. And that would mean that we wouldn't require a bunch of lawyers and accountants to do that kind of thing. So lawyers and accountants can have a more of a consultative role and more of a value add role than doing the mundane tasks. So that's going to be really exciting, and I'm just thinking, wow, this is the best.
So when do you believe the switch from fiat currencies to Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies will take place? And
well, it already has for a lot of people.
And what do you see? What does that mean for?
And my prediction of 250,000 by 2022 or 2023, I've hedged it a little bit.
Yeah.
Is really because I'm thinking that's a 5% market share of all the currency in the world. That's probably likely.
Yeah.
4 years to a 5% market share. I think it's about right. Okay, sorry, what were you asking?
How do you believe this will impact the way global government systems operate?
This is going to change everything over time. And you're going to see governments responding in one way or another to this. First of all, this was the first. Now, when we did Hotmail, I saw that governments were going to have to, geographic borders are going to fall. We can communicate across border. We can leave, we can come back, but we still sort of felt like we were part of a tribe. We were still like the tribe of America or the tribe of China or the tribe of whatever. Well, the decentralized currency that's global, suddenly we're all a part of the same thing. And it's this sort of connection. We're not international anymore, we're global. We're all a part of this same flying basketball through the world, right? I mean, through the universe. Well, to me, that means we're about to go through an anthropological leap to where these borders don't mean that much. And I started to think, the Prime Minister of Estonia came to Draper University and spoke and said a bunch of other things, but then handed me a virtual residency card and said, you're the third virtual resident of Estonia. And what that means is I can set up a bank account or buy real estate or set up a business anywhere in the EU, and I never have to set foot there, which is really interesting. All of a sudden, government has just figured out how they can compete for us across borders, through anywhere in the world. And these governments are going to have to compete for us. They're going to have to do whatever they can to get you to be a part of that government. And so that is going to change the nature of government. They're going to go from a control organization to a service-based organization. And the best of the countries are becoming the service-based organization, and the worst of them are becoming even more controlling. And the best way to explain this is that lots of great things were happening in China. There were some amazing entrepreneurs, lots of crypto, lots of Bitcoin, lots of interesting things. And then the Chinese government said, it's all illegal. That's the controlling government sort of clinging to the past. I highly recommend that they change their thinking. Then Japan said, Bitcoin's a national currency, and here's how you do an ICO in Japan. They decided they would become a service government, and that attracts all the entrepreneurs because they go, oh, where am I going to start? I'll start in Japan. And Binance was a company based in China, and they grew to be about $10 billion in trading Bitcoin and other currencies. Well, China said it's illegal what you're doing, and so Binance lifted themselves above the idea of being a Chinese, and they moved to Singapore, and Singapore got heavy-handed, and they moved to Malta. So they recognize that they are a company of the world. And I think you're going to see more companies of the world, more people of the world, and our world is going to be one. I think we're going to look back, you go one or two more generations from now, grandchildren are going to ask their grandparents, what were these strange booths that were lined up across pieces of land? And the grandparents are going to say, well, that was customs. And that was like people were trying to keep people out of different parts of the world. And the grandkids would say, that's stupid. That makes no sense. Why would we ever do that? So I think we're moving towards something that's going to really change a whole bunch of big industries and governments. And governments will respond in one of two ways. And the ones that go back to the control and the past are going to suffer. Their economies will go flat. But the ones that are going toward service orientation and toward the future are going to be the big winners of the next 40 years. It's pretty interesting. This is a good time.
Yeah.
This, for venture capital, couldn't be better. Whenever there's this kind of turmoil and change and whatever, entrepreneurs are coming up with really interesting new projects and great things for us to fund.
You've been quoted saying that blockchain is the next internet. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, it's a little different from just being the next internet. The internet transformed industries like communications and information and gaming and entertainment and taxis and hotels, all very big, healthy industries. They're sort of $10 to $100 billion industries, most of them. Well, Bitcoin and all the associated technologies with Bitcoin, the blockchain, the smart contracts, Lightning Network, Open Node, all of those technologies have, combined with artificial intelligence and big data, have the ability to transform the biggest industries in the world, the trillion-dollar industries, finance and banking and commerce, along with real estate and insurance and healthcare and government. All of those industries are ripe for transformation with these technologies. So I think entrepreneurs are going to get very clever, and they're going to have lots of interesting new businesses that go after those enormous industries.
I'm going to switch the topic a little bit. Why do you disagree with Elon Musk about AI?
Oh, because, I don't disagree. Elon's brilliant. Anything he says goes. But whatever he said, it's probably right. But here's what I think. I think artificial intelligence is the equivalent of the hoe, where people were on their knees digging in the ground and trying to put seeds down there. And then somebody invented the hoe, and you didn't have to be on your knees and in the ground. You could just do this. And that's what artificial intelligence is. It's moving us to a higher plane. The mundane tasks are going to be obsolete because they're going to be handled by artificial intelligence, and humans will be able to abstract more, and their jobs will be much more interesting. It used to be that 97% of the population was agrarian, and they were all digging and planting, and if they weren't out killing animals. Well, now 97% of the population is not agrarian and they can do all these other things. Well, what's really great about that is all those other things now, many of them can be done by AI, and we humans can do even more interesting things that are even beyond our imaginations, what our imaginations are today. So this is a great leap forward. It's so exciting.
It is. It's indeed very exciting.
Yeah, I'm looking at what kind of AI I can use to evaluate entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
You know, you get a camera up there and run all the data. And, you know, if they blush, what does that mean?
What does that mean?
Yeah. Are they nervous? How does it? All that stuff. It should be. That can be done on AI.
Yeah.
And better than I can do it.
Yeah.
I mean, I can spot things
Yeah.
in people, but
Yeah.
I think it'd be great.
Yeah.
I can apply my expert system to that artificial intelligence.
Right.
And so, good, then I get to do stuff that's less mundane.
Yeah.
And I think the same's going to be true of the accountant whose typical mundane tasks will be replaced by the blockchain, or the lawyer whose mundane tasks are replaced by the smart contracts. And everybody gets to kind of think about what's next and how can they go forward. And more value will be created for humanity, and so there'll be more wealth.
Right.
It's good.
What is your advice? List 3 items. Your advice to the aspiring entrepreneurs out there.
So, aspiring entrepreneurs should no longer aspire. They should take the first step. That's number 1. Take that first step. See what it looks like. Then take the next step. Maybe you have to take a couple of steps back. Maybe you have to start over. But if you don't take that first step, you'll never know. So get the thing out there. Go, do it, whatever it is, do it. And build on each conversation, and then be very open with everyone. Tell them what you're doing. Don't worry so much about. A lot of scientists are trying to protect their stuff. Yeah. And when you try to protect your stuff, you hide it, and then you forget where it is. That's kind of what's going on with a lot of science throughout the world. Scientists should open up and say, hey, this is what I've got. What kind of a deal are you going to cut with me? And I think we'd all do a lot better if that were the case. Other things entrepreneurs should probably do are, once you've got a product out there, see if you can get your customer to love it so much that they become your sales force. That's very important. And then try to get the end user. Don't be at the mercy of a bigger company. That would be. Do the hard stuff. Make the short-term sacrifice for long-term success. Don't try to make it fast. Do the hard stuff. Do the slow, hard, grueling work.
That's great advice. Thank you. You know what? It's been a pleasure having you on the show. Thanks for being here.
It's been fun to be on your show.
Yeah, I hope to see you again sooner than later.
Great. Well, thanks so much. This is fun.
And folks, thanks for joining us today. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.